Hey guys, Foxdrop here with a jungle guide for Kindred. Kindred is a really strong early game jungler who can farm the jungle, gank and fight enemy junglers extremely effectively. She's also fairly good at killing tanks thanks to her passive, but can struggle later on in the game if forced to teamfight as she's very squishy and doesn't offer as much in fights as those other tankier junglers. In this guide video, we're going to take a look at a bunch of stuff ranging from your runes and masteries, your item builds, how to play effectively at various stages of the game, and some tips to make you the best Kindred you can be. This is a video being made in partnership with Pro Guides, a learning platform that delivers quality guides from your favourite players, which I'll give you more information on at the end. Feel free to leave any questions you might have about Kindred down below in the comments, or leave me suggestions for future guides as well. So let's start by getting rid of all the boring stuff out of the way first. Your runes want to look something like this. This suits a strong 1v1 marksman like Kindred very well. Your masteries will either want to focus on the Thunderlord's Decree or Strength of the Ages, depending on whether you want more overall damage and assassination power or a more safer, well-rounded game. Your item build is going to be a little spicy on Kindred. You'll want AD items, which ones you'll go for will be almost entirely unique depending on the game. You want to get a Skirmisher's Saber into a Warrior Enchant for a better early game or a Devourer for a better mid and late game. Your boots will almost always want to be Swifties and start with that refillable potion, as Kindred doesn't really need that extra regen early on. Hex Drinker and Sterit's Gauge are good balances between offensive and defensive items, whereas Rapid Fire Cannon, Yumu's Ghostblade and Blade of the Ruined King are good offensive bets as well. Basically, if you can build it on an AD carry, you can probably build it on Kindred. Moving on with how to actually play Kindred. Her power lies in her early game, so you want to pressure hard at this stage. There aren't many champions who can outfight a Kindred pre-level 6. Now your goal here is to get out of this early game ahead of the enemy team to some regard. Of course you want to pick up your passive stacks by killing the marked jungle monsters wherever you can as well. The way Kindred wants to be fighting is to have the enemy stand in her W. Not only so the wolf can chow down on the enemy, but also so you can hop more and deal extra damage plus have better kiting. Now, smart players won't just stand in that W, so a great strategy is to try and wait for the enemy to face check you in a bush, or to counter gank and only press W when you're close to the enemy. The reason why counter ganking specifically is so effective is because the enemy team will often be pushed out a little further, dedicating to that gank, and they will be using their gap closers to initiate, so they won't have it to run away out of your W. When you are ganking, red buff is a huge enabler for Kindred as a ranged auto attack champion, so if you've got it, gank. Outside of that, because Kindred has no hard CC, she needs to find people overextended or rely on her laners to provide that first bit of CC. Also, you gotta think ahead and mark someone who you intend to go and gank, because it takes some time for your mark to wind up, so you've gotta kind of predict it. Moving on and getting into the mid game, it's very similar for Kindred as in the early game, except there will probably be less ganks and more skirmishes around objectives or invades. Kindred is still very good here as long as she doesn't eat any crowd control, because she is very squishy and will blow up very fast. She can also solo dragon from quite early on as well, so keep a pink on hand so you can take that away scot-free. Late game is probably Kindred's toughest stage of the game, depending on how strong she got early and mid, and how well she stacked her passive, and whether she went Warrior Enchant or Devourer. Warrior being better in the early game, and Devourer being better scaling into that late game. At this stage of the game, you'll be fighting a fair amount, and if she isn't decently strong, she will struggle to handle the tanks in her face. She also won't offer the same teamfight presence as those tank junglers will either. However, Kindred does give you a good Baron and Dragon pressure, being able to melt them pretty hard, especially with Devourer, and doubly especially with Blade of the Ruined King, and triply especially if she's got a decent amount of passive stacks. When you are teamfighting on Kindred, aim for the squishies if you can, but don't put yourself in a position where you're running through the whole enemy team and simply dying. Don't dedicate too hard and play around your W cooldown. The last little point I want to make here as well is that your ultimate is a really unique tool, and in my experience the best way to think about it is to think of it like a Zonya. It buys time for you, your allies, and even potentially your enemies, so be careful how you use it. If you want to watch a full gameplay of Kindred, I've already done one which I will link to in the description. But anyway, I think that covers pretty much all of the important points on Kindred. Like I said in the beginning of this video, this was made in partnership with Pro Guides. They are a tool to help you become a better League player. They're worth checking out. Lots of good guides, good customer service. I'll put a link to them in the description. If you enjoyed this guide, feel free to give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to me for more educational League content. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and catch me streaming over at twitch.tv/Foxdrop as well. All of those links, guys, are in the description. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in my next video.